It's an ugly stream, a meta stream, a stream hostile to casual play as we know it. And gentlemen, I don't mean to alarm you, but we're back, baby. We're back, yes! The god win rate keeps on rising! 828 players. This is what we call a busy week. When we start getting 600 to 700 tends to be about the average. 800, 900, 1,000, that's when we've had a big weekend. There were 3,999 games played. That resulted in 1,944 victories with 133 players going either undefeated or only losing one game. And then there were 14 events. Let's start off at the bottom. We have got, to very few people's surprise, although to my great sadness, we have got Deathwatch. Oh, Deathwatch. Now, there's some weird data going on. Although that's the averages. Okay. So Deathwatch, there were only two players. I think the issue with Deathwatch right now is they're fluctuating so much of how few players they've got. So 1 week they'll have like 8 players and the win rate will be fine. And 1 week they'll have 2 players and the win rate will be down the dog. They won 3 games out of 10. Giving them a 30% win rate, which is very, very low, versus their average over the last 12 weeks of 40%. If you've only got 2 players on a quiet week, like, a quiet week being like 300, 400 players, quite quiet, then having low, that's when we would expect to see low player numbers, because it's a quieter week. But having a busy week with low player numbers is really sad. Deathwatch really needs some serious love from GW. Frankly, they are one of the coolest factions. Frankly, look, I'm just gonna go out here. This is my opinion. So feel free to agree or disagree with it, but this is my hot steaming shit of a take. Deathwatch are way cooler than armies like Adeptus Custodes. I know I'm not just saying that because of the recent female Custodes. As I've said many times, I don't give a shit about that. And as I've said many times, I don't like Custodes. I think they're a phenomenally boring faction. When your entire faction is based about how perfect they are, no. So Deathwatch are just a way cooler than Custodes. I'm sorry, Grey Knight fans. I think Deathwatch are much cooler than Grey Knights. And I think Deathwatch are much cooler than Sisters of Battle. I like Sisters of Battle, don't get me wrong, but if you had to say rank these in order, I would go Deathwatch, Sisters, Grey Knights, and then Custodes way at the bottom. For like the extra adepts of the Imperium. And so yeah, I think Deathwatch are just amazing. They're really cool. Godlike Poet. Deathwatch are so fucking cool. I want them to be good so bad. I've loved them since I first read Eisenhorn. Totally agree. When I first read about them in Eisenhorn as well, and how Eisenhorn managed to make one of the Deathwatch librarians laugh. Brilliant. Yeah. What I'm saying with this is Games Workshop. I'm fairly confident I'm not the only one that thinks Deathwatch are phenomenally cool. Also, so the community is there if you support it. Also, we have seen Deathwatch historically be very, very popular when they've been made viable. A lot of people have Deathwatch as like a secondary or tertiary army. Like, they have it as a backup. They have it as a palette cleanser. And people invest in their palette cleansers when they're good. And when they're bad, they just stick to their main army. So it's a relatively easy army to get. Also, it's a relatively easy army to get people into because it's a fucking piece of piss to paint. It's black and silver. Could not get an easier color scheme to paint. So yeah, I think Deathwatch right now are really bad. They're basically a dead faction, but and that makes me very sad because they're one of my favorite factions, and I think it would be relatively easy for GW to reinvigorate them. Tyranids are actually realistically in last place. And they continue their downward trend. There's a number of let's just look at the main stats first, then have a look at, like, get into the stats a little bit further and then explain where we think Tyranids are. So, why Tyranids are the way they are. So 33 players shows good player numbers. They were able to get 64 wins out of 161 games played, but 4 players went X and 1, almost undefeated. But no one actually won an event, and over the last 12 months, they've only won 1 event. This means that they've had over the last 12 weeks. I keep saying months. Over the last 3 months, they've won 1 event. Over the last 3 months, they've got a 43% win rate, and this week they have a 40% win rate. So Tyranids have fallen into a pattern. They always have good player numbers, but their win rate has basically been, give or take, 40%. Since the beginning of 10th, Tyranids have been in the low 40s, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Firstly, the lists that you see taken fundamentally lack anti-tank. And so a lot of the units that Nids rely upon through anti-tank aren't really being fielded all that much. For example, Zonothropes are normally good at busting tanks, but you see them fielded fairly often, but then Tyranids players complain about how fragile they are, and it's not every list that you see with them in. I think the big issue, a lot of Tyranids players are trying to make them do damage, and I'm not sure if faction wins by doing damage. Vanguard Onslaught. Okay, we had 2 players out of 33. We had 2 players out of Vanguard Onslaught. Not a great sample size, but we'll roll with it. And they managed to win 5 out of 10 games, which got them a 50% win rate. Now, considering neither player went undefeated, that means you conclude that one guy went 2 and 3 and one guy went 3 and 2. That is exactly what I would expect from Vanguard Onslaught. Vanguard Onslaught can win 2. Vanguard Onslaught goes 2 and 3 on a bad day and goes 3 and 2 on a good day. The problem with Vanguard Onslaught is that it does even less damage than most other Tyranid lists. It does fucking no damage. It's just a very sneaky. And it has lots of tricks, and it bamboozles you, and if you're not used to its tricks or you've not encountered them before, then it wins. But we're starting to remember the Tyranid Codex has been out for quite a while now. We're starting to get to that stage in the meta, almost a year into 10th. We're starting to get to that stage in the meta where a lot of people who are going to tournaments are regularly going to tournaments or have been to tournaments at least once or twice before. Okay, we've had the new injection of blood. We're sort of there's still a few new people coming in. There's always people coming to 40k, but in the tournament scene, we're starting to see at least an equilibrium of new players every tournament and the same players each tournament. As the community starts getting more experienced, Vanguard Onslaught kind of went from being, everyone said it was like the best Nid way to run things, to now it's fallen to you'll go 2 and 3, 3 and 2, but you'll never do better than that. And the reason is people are learning its tricks. You face it once, it fucks you. You face it the second time, you fuck it. Okay, we then have Synaptic Nexus. Synaptic Nexus is basically taken, and correct me if I'm wrong here, I'm going off the top of my head, it's basically taken because it has Armor of Contempt. And so Armor of Contempt means that the Nids have some level of durability. But that's really why people take it. It gets an Armor of Contempt stratagem. 3 people took it. They managed to win 6 out of 15 games, giving them a 40% win rate, 41% average. Nothing really new to report about Synaptic Nexus. People have been trying to make it work for a while now, and it's not really breaking out. We're basically, every single one of these players went 2 and 3. Kind of what that's Synaptic. That's all Synaptic Nexus does. It goes 2 and 3. The problem with relying on something like Armor of Contempt is that 40k is inherently a really, really lethal game, and so if your whole thing is, I'm going to be hyper durable, the problem is that can you be hyper durable for 5 turns into the hyper lethal top tier lists or even middle tier lists? And the answer is no, you can't do it into the majority of them, and the evidence is there, hence why they can only do it 2/5 of the time and not half the time. So, Crusher Stampede. There's basically nothing to say about Crusher Stampede. It's shit. It has been shit since day one. It regularly is one of those attachments that doesn't even get anyone using it. It's so bad. The 3 people that took Crusher Stampede must have been returning to the game with their old Crusher Stampede from 9th edition and from 8th edition and not realise how phenomenally shite it is in 10th edition. Unfortunately, which is a shame because Crusher Stampede is historically good for Tyranids, and Nidzilla is a historical, traditional playstyle for them. Unending Swarm. Actually, Assimilation Swarm. It's one dude. Sample size too small. One dude who only won 1 out of 5 games. Brave, beautiful bastard, but there's so little information on Assimilation Swarm that I've never encountered it. I know nothing about it. All I can say is every single week, not every time someone runs it on these Meta Mondays, they just get their shit pushed in. I don't think I've ever seen this thing. I mean, I've never seen this thing go 4-0, 4-1. Never. Insane. Don't know what it is, but like Crusher Stampede, it rarely pops up. When it does, I get the distinct feeling it's someone that was either trying it out just to try it out, which is fucking brave, try something out for the sake of it at GT, or it was a new player who always does well with Assimilation Swarm at home in his battle bunker versus mates, went to his first tournament with it and found out that he was a big fish in a little pond back home, basically. Unending Swarm. I think Unending Swarm is the key to upping the Tyranid win rate. On a very, very rare occasion when the stars align, I think it wins a GT. I don't think it wins a super major. I don't think it wins a major, but I think it wins between a 30 and 40 player GT. Like I said, when the stars align, when the matchups are good, I think it can win a GT. And it can certainly win an RTT, for sure. An Ending Swarm when we get is, I think, the answer to getting the Tyranid win rate closer to 50%. 50% of the time, it works every time. And we can see that in the data now. Again, we've only got 2 players. Sometimes it's a little bit lower, sometimes a little bit higher, but they always get, like, on average, 50%. And these 2 players, one of them went 4, and this is really cool. So one of them went 4-1, and we know that because out of the 2 players, one went almost undefeated, but didn't go and win a tournament, right? So one person went 4-1. The other one went 1-4. Why is there such a disparity there? Well, basically, Unending Swarm does one thing: dominates on primary and fixed secondaries. But you have to go all in. You have to go balls to the wall. It's all gas, no brakes. You have to set up 4 successive waves. You need wave 1 Hormagaunts, wave or gargoyles, whatever you prefer. But wave 1 really fast shit, wave 2 really fast shit, wave 3 like Termagants, wave 4 like Termagants. Okay, you've got to do that. And if you just basically go into every game accepting that you're going to lose 95% of your army, and the aim almost should be to lose 95% of your army, and you'll probably lose all of it by the end of turn 4. But if you go into it with that mindset and understand that damage is irrelevant, you're not trying to damage things, you're trying to tie things up. If you could go in with that mentality, you'll do very well. If you go with an Ending Swarm and you don't think about it and you just go tactical objectives, you'll lose the game. The reason you lose the game is because an Ending Swarm cannot kill Dick. And you're going to pull Assassinate and not be able to do it. You're going to pull No Prisoners and not be able to do it. You're going to put Overwhelming Force and you're not going to be able to do it. You don't kill anything. But you can guarantee yourself to basically sit on those objectives for 3 turns. That's 3 rounds where you get a lot of primary. That's 3 rounds of cleanse, 3 rounds of deploy teleport to Homer, where you can max those particular things out. So yeah, it's an Ending Swarm is a very, very unique playstyle. It also requires a fundamentally large amount of models. So a bit like AdMech, you see a lot of people reluctant to commit to it. Invasion Fleet. I'm going to make a hot take here. Invasion Fleet is both the solution to and the cause of all the Tyranid problems. Controversial, I know. Invasion Fleet. Tyranid players take it because they say to themselves, well, this allows me to do damage. And so I'm going to take this because I'll be able to, my army that doesn't normally damage. Oh, if I come across a horde, I can go sustained hits. If I come across vehicles, suddenly I've got lethal hits. Lethal hits on everything, right? That's amazing. In the hands of a skilled, well-practiced player, will go 4-1. But it will rarely go all the way and win the gold. Problem is that you are trying to, you're with Invasion Fleet. One of the issues you're going to have is from a Tyranid perspective, but there's no way you're ever going to keep up with the damage output of armies that just most other armies in the game. You're going to have good damage output for NIDs, but if you take your Invasion Fleet army and try and get into a fucking firefight with me as a guard player, doesn't matter if you got lethal hits, sustained hits. So the issue, Invasion Fleet, it's a comfy pair of slippers. The Tyranid community loves Invasion Fleet because it makes them feel like they can do stuff, and it makes them feel like they're rolling their dice is meaningful. And it's safe. If you take Invasion Fleet, you will go to your tournament and you won't get whitewashed. You will go 1-4, 2-3, 3-2. And very occasionally someone will do very well and they'll go 4-1. But I don't think Invasion Fleet is the safe option, but it's not the tournament winning option. Well, it is rarely the tournament winning option. Is Invasion Fleet, has it become a bit of a crutch? Does a bit like some other factions in 40k, does the community need to start opening their mind and exploring some other things? I think an ending swarm, as someone who has run an ending swarm, I think that's the answer. Not necessarily the answer to victory, but the answer to getting the win rate up a bit. So we've got Dark Angels. Dark Angels have seen some funny times, haven't they? 32 players. Quite good numbers. No one can ever accuse Dark Angels of not being a popular faction. They managed to get 64 wins out of 157 games. 5 of their players went 4-1. Really, really, good stuff. 41% win rate overall with a 45% average. Let's go through Dark Angels. As in, you want to play your Space Marines not as Green Marines, but as actual motherfucking Dark Angels are in a really, really, really bad spot. Unforgiven Task Force, 43%, not ideal. Gladius Task Force, 31%. Inner Circle, 20% win rate. Gladius is a bit of a take all comers. You could argue that Gladius is like Green Wing, essentially. You could, but what's the Raven Wing aren't even on here, right? This is probably Green Wing, isn't it? So these are all doing a bit shit. The one thing that is doing well is Ironstorm. Dark Angels do. Ironstorm is just a good detachment. With no matter what chapter you have, Ironstorm is the one that you take if you want to win games. And as you can see, Ironstorm does get, out of over half of the players that ran Dark Angels, Ironstorm went 4-1. Wow. Really fucking impressive. But why are we not seeing that translate into any tournament wins? So I'm going to say this now about Ironstorm because it'll come up a few times, but I'll say it now to kind of like box it off. Ironstorm is really good at shooting the shit out of stuff. And we've said this before on the More Than Glory channel. If you focus on killing, you just go pure killy, you'll start winning games. Because there'll always be a faction out there more killy than you. Something overpowered and overtuned. Or there'll always be a faction out there that doesn't really rely upon killing things for it to win. Or it kills things and it scores points, whereas you only kill things. So Ironstorm Spearhead, I've seen this firsthand. I've seen Ironstorm Spearhead go 4 games in a row, crush everything, and then get tabled inside of 2 turns at top table. A couple of interesting bits. We're starting to see Vanguard Spearhead start doing well for Marines. We've seen it in other factions. We're now seeing it pop up with Dark Angels. So that's cool. Vanguard, very sneaky, lots of very good scoring potential. And we're seeing Firestorm Assault Force starting to pick up a little bit. Only 2 players of Dark Angels, but one of those players did go 4-1. Both of these detachments do well because they're movement based and movement wins games. Now, Space Marines have had a really interesting weekend. So the player numbers are really high. They've also managed to win 100 games out of 241 games played, and 7 of their people went 4-1, but no one won a tournament. They've got a 41% win rate this weekend and an average of 42%. That 42%, I think looking at Spaces now, you basically can't look at that average there. You can't look at the average there. You've got to look at the averages within that. And you can see the reason why the win rate's quite low is you've got like Anvil Siege Force, where one dude played one game. One dude literally turned up, lost his first game, didn't turn up to the rest of the tournament. So that Imperial Fist player definitely did not enact the Last War Protocol. And then no one played First Company. No one played Stormland Sky, took a week off, which is hilarious. Firestorm Assault Force had a bad week. Firestorm Assault Force seems like it's a solid RTT, low-level GT kind of thing. But it seems like when we get to the busy weeks, the big events, it doesn't keep holding on. Ironstorm does Ironstorm things. Everything I said about Ironstorm basically for Dark Angels holds true here. It shoots the shit out of things. It's the best way to run your Space Marines. Unfortunately, it's very one-dimensional, so you'll always go sort of 4-1, but you'll rarely go 5-0 with it. Vanguard Spearhead, showing that it still has some play, actually beating the average win rate of Ironstorm this weekend and having the same average win rate over the last 2 months, and actually having more tournament wins over the last 3 months. But the thing is that Vanguard, it looks like it has play, but it looks like Ironstorm will consistently go 4-1. Vanguard the stars will occasionally align and allow it to go all the way. Most of the time, it won't though. Gladius continues to be a very, very solid detachment. Not great, not terrible, but good for Marines. 9 players, 1 person going 4-1 with it. 41% average, not 3.6, not great, not terrible. I think the overall problem with Marines is it seems like there are a lot of the other divergent chapters which basically do the same thing better. Why would you take basic Marines and do Ironstorm Spearhead when you can go Dark Angels and do Ironstorm Spearhead and get all the Dark Angel rules plus the Ironstorm rules? Overall, Marines seeing decent numbers and decent player numbers, but as you can see, their win rates are very stagnant at the moment. They're all within 2 or 3% of each other, and we're not seeing any major jump ups. Looks like Space Marines have settled. They're comfy now. They're in a holding pattern. There's a few factions that have fallen into a holding pattern. Dark Elder are one of them as well. So this week, everyone got the memo. They completed their training, and everyone ran Sky. Everyone out of 21 players ran Sky Splinter Assault. No one let the side down by taking Real Space Raiders. They won 42 out of 101 games. No one went 4-1 though, so everyone went 3-2 or worse. And Dark Elder had a 42% win rate this week against an average of 45%. Now that's a little bit of a fall, but actually is kind of in line with the Dark Angels, with the Dark Eldar and the pattern that they have fallen into. On a quiet week, get 50% or just above, and they do quite well, and they win some small GTs, and they do fine. But the Sky Splinter Assault, we've seen it dip down once or twice before on these particularly busy weekends. Essentially, Dark Eldar are in a very mid-tier position. They will go 3-2 at most local events. They'll go 2-1 at an RTT. They might even win the occasional RTT, and they might even win the occasional GT. But they're not major or super major material, and not in the by and large. There'll always be exceptions that prove the rule. We have seen that over the last 3 months. Dark Elder have been able to actually win 5 events, but we've not seen them really fluctuate. They always 47% is very normal, and they're always either a maximum 5% above that or 5% below it. Essentially, Dark Elder have quite a simple play style at the moment. It's very Dark Elder, but it's quite simple. Put stuff in boats, run at people, and shoot people and chop people up. Now, the problem is, however, if you only have one playstyle, people start adapting to it. A bit like what we've seen with orcs in the past, when there was that moment when orcs just dipped really low because everyone's got used to playing off pressure lists. After the first few times it beat the shit out of everyone got used to it. And it's kind of similar. We've seen sometimes issues like that with World Eaters, where they just get, they've probably done quite well. World Eaters haven't done that well this week. So yeah, the problem is if you've only got one viable detachment and one viable playstyle, people start getting very used to it. We've seen it with Orcs, we've seen it with World Eaters, and we've seen it with Space Marines. Like, Ironstorm Spearhead was smashing people when it first came out. Not in the way of being overpowered. They complain about it because it's the only viable option. But all Ironstorm lets Space Marine players do is keep the head above the water, because it's the only viable tactic and everyone's adapted to it. Same thing happening with Drukhari here. In fact, I would say, and I've heard there is going to be a new points update this week, guys. I've heard it's scheduled for Wednesday. That's the chit chat I've heard around the proverbial water cooler. And I'm kind of hoping for some major shakeups in there, because we're getting, we've had a lot of factions over the last 3 months that have really fallen into similar patterns, and we need a nice injection of newness to get the meta exciting. And we don't want things settling down too much. We want things to stay fresh and interesting and awesome. And I've heard that they might be getting some new points this week. Chaos Space Marines. Speaking of a faction that is probably holding out hope for the balance change for the points changes to do them some good. Chaos Space Marines. 34 players. 72 games won out of 172 played. 2 players went 4-1, which is all right. Decent player numbers. Okay, there's some players that can go 4-1 with them. 42% win rate this week. 42% win rate over the average over the last 3 months. 2 players won events, but over the last 2 months, but no one won an event this weekend. Right. I know that a lot of you don't like it when I say this to you. I'm not going to mention it. Okay, I'm not going to mention it. But you need to fucking mix things up. I'm sorry, I saw it again. Guys. Dear Bad and Blob. No, I don't know what I saw it again this weekend. Do you want to know what I found out? When I was looking at Chaos Space? Because I found out, bingo, it's still bad. We all know it. Did you know that Chaos Space Marine players at 2,000 points can take can do better mechanized armies than Mech Guard? You know that? I didn't know that until I looked into it. You can get 6 Predators and 6 Rhinos all filled with las cannons, Havoc launchers, everything. I'm sorry. I'm going to wait for this points update to drop, and then I might build that fucking list and play that fucking list to actually see if I can win some games with it. Okay? Because there's no, that's an insane amount of armor. And you can put Mark of Zinch or Mark of Nurgle, the Mark of 5+ critical hits, whatever it might be called, on every single vehicle. After Chaos Space Marines, we have got Imperial Knights and Chaos Knights. And it's somewhat fitting that both of these armies are next to each other. There's not much new to say about either of these, so I'm not going to. The only thing of note, I think, is that how much more popular Chaos Knights are than Imperial Knights. That's the only thing that I think is interesting. Chaos Knights far outstripping their Imperial Knight counterparts. And that's because Chaos Baby Knights fundamentally are better than Imperial Knight Baby Knights. Well, at least you'd think so. When you put these guys side by side, look at over the last 3 months. Last 3 months, we've been saying consistently, Chaos Knights do better. Imperial Knight army rules don't work. They both spam the Baby Knights, but the Chaos Knights are just better. And then you get down to it, and this week, 42%. And over the last 3 months, the Chaos Knights got 1% more. 1% more than the Imperial Knights. All that for a drop of blood. But yeah, it's Chaos Knights are just spamming Baby Knights, just spamming War Dogs, just non-stop. Imperial Knights, you tend to see one or two big knights, and then lots and lots of little knights. But by and large, it's still these smaller knights which are being heavily lent into for both factions. And then we get to Death Guard. I like Death Guard. I know, Commissar, this stream right here. I know. I like Death Guard. I think Death Guard are one of the strongest armies right now. They're so... Every time I run them, they feel phenomenal to use. Every like, just got so many good options for data sheets. Yeah. We'll go through the numbers. So 42 players, really healthy numbers there. 93 wins out of 208 games played. 5 players going 4-1. 45% win rate overall. 45% win rate this week. 47% win rate overall. No one won an event, but Death Guard have won 6 events. 6 events in the last 3 months, which is pretty good. I have seen more and more people moving away from Mortarion, and I think that's a good thing. Mortarion and the Plague Burst Crawler spam was something that really got Death Guard, gave them the leg up that they needed. But a lot of people have moved away from it now. You still see Mortarion, but I played against him this weekend and he killed 4 models. He did a great buffing support, great support unit, but he didn't do much himself. And and Demon Primarch should be buffing and killing. He should be doing everything. I mean, look at Magnus. Magnus is an Angon of Demon Primarch's done right. Mortarion's just a babysitter, and yeah. I'm not saying Mortarion's bad, and I think a lot of new players are still leaning into him. But I think that I'm starting to see, whenever I see Death Guard across the hall now, maybe 50% of the time there's Mortarion, and 50% of the time there isn't Mortarion. I have to say, I've had great success with my mechanized Death Guard. My mechanized Death Guard, it's a little weird, and I am definitely inserting my own opinion here, but I have had good success with Land Raiders. I know, Mordian, what are you saying? I've run mechanized Death Guard 3 times now, as I've basically rammed it down the enemy's throat. Just rammed it down. Doesn't matter if the transports die, just ram it down the enemy's throat. I just need the transports to get there. Once the Death Guard are in amongst your lines, and the quicker that they can get in amongst your lines, that's when it's over. The moment that you start getting into the contagion range and everyone starts having like -1 to hit, -1 ballistic skill and weapon skill, it's fucking over, man. It's fucking over. I took the last time I used my Death Guard was only last week. I had a unit of Terminators with a Terminator Lord in it who had the living plague to extend his aura by 3 inches, and I deep strike them down to the middle of the board, turn 2, and by turn 3 pretty much my entire opponent's army was covered by his 12-inch contagion bubble. You couldn't hit anything. It was a -1 ballistic skill and weapon skill, and then when he tried to shoot my big unit of Terminators, I put Cloud of Flies on there, which is -1 to hit. And Death Guard, Plague Marines right now are, I'm going to say it right now, Plague Marines are the best infantry in the game. The best bang for buck. They are cheap enough where you can spam quite a lot of them, and they are so good at shooting, and they are so good at combat. They can outshoot shooty armies, they can out-combat combat armies. Because if you have the guys that fight first in there, when the combat army comes to you, you kill them. Let's put it this way. I had a single unit of Plague Marines wipe out 40 Guardsmen in a turn. Okay? Because what they did is, they in the Land Raider, they drove up and they got out. And there were 2 lines of Guardsmen. The first line of Guardsmen, the second line of Guardsmen behind, they shot everything into it. And just, the only thing I had in the unit was a Tallyman. Wiped the whole 20-man blob out. And then I charged the 20-man blob in front of me. Cleared that out. 40 Guardsmen cleared in 1 turn. From a 180-point unit. My opponent couldn't do anything about it. My opponent then tries to shoot back at the Death Guard, and I'm like, -2. -1 to blitz skill, -1 for Cloud of Flies. He killed like 3 or 4 of the unit, and then I just walked up to another unit of Guardsmen. walked up to the unit of reinforcing guardsmen and punched them back off the shot and punched them off the board. Death Guard in a really, really solid spot right now. Plague Boast Course Mortarion are an old combo, but I don't think it's the best way. I truly think Pressure Mech Death Guard is one to keep an eye out for. Cheap Rhinos, very effective infantry, and being able to spread contagion phenomenally quickly is definitely something to be on the lookout for, boys. So, Space Wolves, 22 players, 47 games won, 105 games played, one person went 4-1, 45% win rate, 49% win rate over the last 3 months. No tournaments won this week, 3 tournaments won in the last 3 months. Everyone played Stormlands. Okay, not everyone. There were 6 people that played the other million detachments. No one played Champions of Rust, and no one's played it in a long time. It's Stormlands. Space Wolves just run Stormlands. That's probably where Stormlands guy went. Stormlands guy probably went, fuck it, I'll just move over to Space Wolves. And yeah. So how Space Wolf Stormlands works is they do something called Wolf Jail, where they take loads of Space Wolves on Thunder Wolves and they rush you. It's very effective. It does actually work a lot of the time, and pressure lists do work a lot of the time. It has seen ups and downs of effectiveness. We have seen some weeks where Stormlands has done pretty badly, but we've seen some weeks where Stormlands has done phenomenally well. This is one of those latter scenarios. Now, the majority of people are going 3-2 with it, but 3-2 is, you know, is a positive win rate at a tournament, 60%. So it's so, and if you look at this, 54% of people, it's got a 54% win rate this weekend, and it's got a 53% win rate, 53% win rate over the last 12 weekends. So Stormlands works. Wolf Jail works. It's had its ups and downs, but in the long run, it works. Guys, we back in 7th edition. Wolfstar has risen from the dead. World Eaters are in a very similar sort of place. We've seen World Eaters go up and down a little bit. 34 players is really good numbers for what is, in theory, the newest faction to 40k. 77 wins out of 171 games played. 2 people are actually going 4-1, but no one able to win a tournament. A lot of these pressure lists do that. And World Eaters are a pressure faction, and you'll notice that every so often a pressure list wins an event, but by and large, pressure lists go at best 4-1. And that's because some lists, if you try and rush them and pressurize them, they blow you off the table. It's still 10th edition 40k at the end of the day. Hyper lethal. Even though they tried to make it less lethal, hyper lethal. Now, there's no real new things to say about World Eaters. The one concern I have about World Eaters long term is their reliance on. We may be seeing Death Guard moving away from Mortarion. I don't think I've ever seen a World Eaters list not have Angron. He's very, 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 very good. And but he is a crutch. Now the army doesn't have a huge amount of data sheets, so it's understandable that they're gonna lean on one. I'm just worried what would happen to World Eaters if they'd be left in shambles if Angron got nerfed because he was too much of an auto-include. What would they pivot to? World Eaters also run into Custodes and table themselves. There are 2 possible paths for World Eaters. There's the red pill and there's the blue pill. Okay? The red pill is that they don't get any nerfs and their number 1 gatekeeper, Custodes, gets taken around the back of the chemical sheds and shot through the back of the head. Okay? If that happens, we will see World Eaters surge. They'll start breaking through high 40% win rate. They'll start breaking through maybe even 50% win rates, if not higher. World Eaters are kept in check by Custodes. If, unfortunately, Angron does get nerfed, we may see World Eaters, and the World Eaters don't get something else they can pivot to, we may see them struggle. World Eaters have got a very interesting future ahead of them. Right now, they're running at things and chopping them to pieces, and Angron's coming back. 45% of the time it works, 45% of the time, 55% of the time it doesn't work. What the future holds World Eaters is going to depend on A, how far custodians fall down, and B, if they get any of their crutches removed. Orcs. Now, orcs are in an interesting place right now because obviously we're kind of just waiting for the Orc Codex to come out, and it's going to come out pretty soon. Orcs have, after plummeting down a little bit, they've recovered somewhat. So orcs were basically using the same list over and over and over again. Orc pressure, orc pressure, orc pressure. And it was doing good work for them. But the problem is a lot of people started adapting to it. And so we did have and custodies started surging. And like World Eaters, when custodies do well, orcs fall down. We're still seeing remnants of that, but orc players had good numbers this weekend. 35 players, 77 wins out of 170 games played. 4 people going 4-1, and someone actually won an event with orcs. Can I just say I appreciate how orc players have got a 45% win rate this week and over their average, and same for World Eaters. That's kind of crazy. So they won a 36-player GT. If the local meta has lots of custodians in it, they're going to struggle. If the local meta doesn't have a lot of custodians in it, then they'll probably be okay. But orcs, I think orcs are going to go from strength to strength. I think that new codex is going to be an amazing codex. I don't know if it's going to be amazingly powerful, but I think the amount of variety we are going to see is going to be phenomenal. I think there's viable lists for Green Tide. I think there's viable lists for the Bully Boys. There's viable lists for the what's it called? The Can War one, the Death Dread one, whatever it's called. But anyway, I think the Orc list. I think when the Codex comes out, I think that we could see the Orc win rate fluctuate wildly for, I'm going to say 2 months. 2 months tops, maybe 1 month, 1 to 2 months. We're going to see the Orc win rate, 4 to 8 weekends. We're going to see the Orc win rate just roller coaster like this. It could plummet real low. It could plummet to the 30s. It could go as high as 50s. Okay, it's going to be an absolute roller coaster. And the reason is that people are going to be trying all sorts of wacky waving inflatable arm floating tube man lists. They're going to be trying out all sorts of things. The Orc community is going to hit that codex in a big way. They're going to try different things out in a big way. There's going to be a lot of people that play orcs in a specific way as well. There's going to be the people that always play Green Tide. They'll be hitting it hard. There's going to be those people that play Green Tide that haven't been playing because Green Tide isn't supported right now. And likewise, there's going to be people that run lots of can walls and mobs and everything. I think that we are going to see a big roller coaster, and we're going to see a mixture of orc players who have been kind of waiting in the shadows to come back with their favorite playstyle. We're going to see that. I think we're going to see a mixture of orc players that just try everything, just jump in from thing to thing. And I think we're going to see competitive players work out what the best orc build is and jump on that. I think there's going to be 3 distinctive camps that are going to form almost instantly when the Orc Codex comes out. So right now, orcs are kind of just, this represents orc pressure and a little bit of variety right now. But the Orc Codex is where we want to be looking now. We then got Eldar. Eldar, such a hard army to... 1 week, they're in the top 3. Sometimes they're on top. 1 week, they are winning the biggest GT of the weekend. And the next, they are slumming it down with the sub 50% factions. They're obviously not the one. They're obviously not the fucking boogeyman that they once were. They're obviously not that. They're obviously still got a huge amount of teeth and a huge amount of play. And the hands of a skilled player, they do very well. But it's obvious that they do struggle at the same time. I suspect that Eldar are a faction now which, in the right hands, in experienced hands, do very, very, very well. I suspect they are a faction which still has the ability to run rings around a lot of skew or one-dimensional armies. However, I think they're an army which, if you don't build your list completely optimized, you're going to struggle. I think, dare I say it, Eldar are where they should be. A very fast, very powerful, very fragile army that will punish you for making mistakes. That's where they should always... I don't think Eldar are a problem anymore. I don't think we're ever going to see them down here. Going over their stats specifically, we've got 44 players, 101 victories out of 216 games played, 6 people going 4-1, but no one going the distance. But Eldar have won 8 events in the last 12 weeks. 47% win rate this weekend, 50% win rate overall. Gene Stealer Cult, my. The dead faction that just won't die. 9 players on a week like this, with almost, not quite, but getting up to 900, getting up to 1,000 players. The week like this, only having 9 players is bad. And yet those 9 players went 21 victories out of 42 games played, and 2 of their players went 4-1. They had a 50% win rate, which is higher than their average of 47%. Is it as simple? 50% of the time you get units back, so 50% of the time you win. It can't be like that. If people are still going 4-1, it means that they're relying on more than just rolling a 4 or a 3 up to get their units back. One thing is clear, the Gene Stealer Cult are not a popular faction right now. They're not a popular faction at all. I have found them increasingly frustrating to play when I have used them. And I have found that the army right now just doesn't feel fun. I think that Gene Stealer Cult need a fundamental rewrite from the ground up. We need to see... in any faction, I would rather see this number high than this number high. Because if this number is high, it means that there's health and life in the faction. This number means that you can win games with them, but this number means no one wants to bother with it. This number determines how interesting your faction is. This number determines how powerful your faction is. Blood Angels, great to see, really good to see. 32 players, 79 games won out of 147 games played. 4 people managing to go 4-1, and 50% win rate, which is 2% higher than the average of 48% win rate. No one won a tournament this week, but they have won 3 tournaments over the last 3 months. What's interesting is that you have seen... Well, you've got one guy who ran Stormlands that actually went 4-1, which is amazing. Definitely something that maybe Blood Angel players need to keep an eye on. Stormlands might be something for them. 4 people went Firestorm and also had similarly very decent results with it, with one person going 4-1. Ironstorm, I guess, being able to this one lets you advance and charge, which is always something Blood Angels like to do. This one lets you advance and shoot, which I imagine you could build into with Blood Angels. Ironstorm Spearhead is always a powerful detachment, as we've said. Gladius Task Force, showing that it's got a few players, but it's just a nice, well-rounded attachment. One person trying Vanguard and unfortunately finding it wanting, but the vast majority of people played Sons of Sanguinius. Now, 20 people played Sons of Sanguinius, but only one of them went 4-1. So that kind of means that, if you want to win, you want to go, do well at a tournament, go 4-1, you shouldn't be playing Sons of Sanguinius. But then the only tournament wins Blood Angels have had in the last 2 months have been with Sons of Sanguinius. We've said a lot about Sons of Sanguinius over the last few months, so there's not really much to add. Essentially, it got updated to allow Blood Angels to actually kill stuff in combat. They got +2 strength on the charge, which basically gave them pseudo +1 to wound in a lot of cases. Sons of Sanguinius allows Blood Angel players to play the way they want to. It seems that occasionally Sons of Sanguinius will let you go 4-1, and very occasionally you'll win an event with it. But Blood Angels overall at this stage do not look like they are a super major winning faction. And I imagine for a lot of Blood Angels players, that feels just fine. They went through a real bad spot at one point, Blood Angels, like real bad. And I imagine they're also probably suffering similar how a lot of armies are to Custodes. And I imagine Blood Angels players are just happy that they can actually run their army the way it's supposed to and not get flattened. I imagine Dark Angels players are looking over at Blood Angels players. Bit of envy right now. Let me get to the best one. I almost forgot why we were all here, boys. Wow, 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 wee, wow. Astra Militarum, his Imperial Guard, the Emperor's true finest. Well, slap my nuts and call me a Jawa if... I have one word for you. Vindication! I said a few months ago, the Guard win rate was gonna do this, then it was gonna do this. And we've been down here. We've been like low 40s, like we've been bang on 40%. This is when the fight begins. This is when the great counterattack happens. Oh, it's gonna keep on going up, boys. It'll go up and down with natural fluctuations, but it's gonna keep on going up. So, 51 players. Wow. That gives us more players than Space Marines. More players than Death Guard. Out of 26 factions, we are the third most played faction right now. That's significant. And the thing is, what's really significant is we have been the third or fourth most played faction for quite a while now. People jumped onto the Guard train. Okay, remember that. We've had a lot of people jumping on for a few weeks and months. Remember that. We'll get back to it in a second. 129 victories out of 256 games played, giving us a 50% win rate, which is a significant jump over our average of 45%. 9 people went 4-1, and Guard got 2 event wins this week. And then there was a major in Canada where Guard went 5-0. So we won a mid-sized event and a big event. Ooh, baby. That's pretty spicy. How do we do in some of the other ones here? Nothing there. Guard coming second and third, podiuming at the Oxford Super Major. So we won. This is so significant. So we won a mid-sized event, we won a major, and then we got second and third. We podiumed at a super major. Now, the reason that is so significant is it shows that unlike a lot of factions, which, they got a tournament win this week. Where was it? 24-player local GT. Okay, it's cool, don't get me wrong, winning a tournament is still very significant. Very well done to that, to those people that do win that. But it's like there is a difference between being able to win a local GT and being able to win a big event. And what this shows is that Guard don't just win at local levels, they win at all levels, whether it's a super major, cutthroat, GT, absolute fucking Shark Tank, or it's a local RTT, or it's something in between. Guard are going to be there, and Guard are going to be doing very nicely. So this what we're seeing here is people completing boot camp. People, remember your training and you will make it back alive. This is people who have lost their first 10 games, who are now starting to win games. This is why I said we've been the third to fourth most popular faction for several weeks now. But our win rate has been going down for several weeks now. Now it's started to go back up because those people who have been playing Guard, have been jumping on the Guard wagon, have been taking their licks, have started figuring out what works. Because Guard is not a difficult faction. Guard is not a high skill faction. Guard is a high practice faction, high experience faction. You need to, every single time you play a faction, the first time you lose. Pretty much. There's always exceptions, but at a competitive, in a lot of cases, the first time you face against an army that's decently powered and you've not played against before, you don't know exactly what your target priority is, you die. We've had a lot of people that have been taking their licks, been getting their practice, been winning games, losing games, and they've started to win, and that win rate started going up. Now, there's two big questions that I know are on everyone's minds right now. First one is, do we think Guard are going to get nerfed? I wouldn't be surprised if there were some points changes, considering that GW has some good people in their balance team now. Whether they listed them or not is different. I suspect that we will see some stuff go down and some stuff go up. I think that will the Manticore go open points again? I don't think GW will put the Manticore open points. They might put the Basilisk. I think the Basilisk might go open points. I don't want it to, but I think it could do. But if GW was smart, then they would put Basilisks. Yeah, if Basilisk went up, they'd put things like field ordnance batteries down. But I suspect the Guard will receive. I expect point changes will come this week as they are rumored to do so. I think Guard will either get changed in the current one or in the next one. Right now, the big thing is that Guard aren't the biggest problem. Biggest problem is Necrons. And Necrons are long overdue a nerf. Long overdue a nerf. And there are a few other factions which are probably long overdue one as well. So, and right now, no one's really complaining about the Guard. Like, people acknowledge that they are... Right now, the current take and the current feeling on Guard is they are stronger than everyone thought they were, but they're not a faction that anyone's complaining about. So I wonder if what we'll see, if we see the top offenders, we see things like Sisters of Battle, who have been consistently top now. And we see things like Necrons, who have been consistently top now. And I think Thousand Suns need a nerf as well, based on my recent experience against them. I think we'll see... I think these three are more likely to catch nerfs. Big nerfs, sweeping nerfs. Whereas I suspect Guard will get some changes this time, but I think GW will give them a light touch. Could be wrong. I think GW will either give them a light touch this time and a heavy touch next time, or we might be in for a heavy touch. Depends on how much focus has been put onto them. But it's hard to say, man. It's hard to say. There's a lot of Guard stuff right now which is very good, but not overpowered. And there's a few bits in the Guard that even I would say is probably a little wacky. But right now, rather than focusing on the future, let's focus on the here and now. Right now, I think that Guard are in an extremely solid position. And I think that we are a faction that has the potential to do well at every level. I personally, and this is not me being biased, it's me being totally honest, I personally think that Guard are right now in the Goldilocks zone. It'll be interesting to see if GW overcorrects. But right now, I think they're in the Goldilocks zone, and I suspect that GW have got bigger ferons to fry. If I say who's in the Goldilocks zone, I think that Eldar, Blood Angels, Guard, Custodians, Grey Knights, Tau, Black Templars, Leagues of Votann, Chaos Demons are all in the Goldilocks zone. And the ideal situation is more attention is given to those factions below that. The Adeptus Custodes. Player numbers have declined. Player numbers have significantly declined. Now, is that... Like, Custodians normally have... Well, let's have a look, actually. Let's go back. Let's see if we can go... Can we go back? No, I think I can't be bothered. So let's start again. So, Adeptus Custodes. They are the second most played faction. They did get 156 wins out of 288 games. They did go 4-1 with 7 players. 51% win rate, very in line with their 52% average win rate. No tournament wins this this time. Now, before we focus on things that might be going on outside of the faction, let's just analyze what's happening right now on the tabletop. Custodians currently are playing, their current viable build is where they basically take a bunch of shit that can sit on objectives and they take fixed objectives. Very, very 9th edition. Unfortunately, it's a very powerful build which can often get them wins, but it's very boring, and so some players will get bored of doing that after a while, which may explain why their player numbers have leveled off a little bit. Also, it's a little one-dimensional, so people will start learning how to adapt to it. The big thing with Custodians is that they have some phenomenally good matchups, which I think overinflates their win rate slightly. So, firstly, any of the combat armies, whether it's Wolf Jail, Blood Angels, whether it's Orcs, World Eaters, they run a Custodians and basically table themselves. So, basically, Custodians are there's some games which they just basically automatically win outside of the dice going a bit squiffy. And then there's some games which they win because they take fixed objectives and the opponent gets like a bad draw on secondaries and they win that way. And then there's just some games, but then there's a bunch of games where outside of that, there are some factions. If your number one sort of mission is to sit on objectives and launch like one unit of wardens out a turn to keep people busy, the problem you're going to have is that 40k, there's always going to be a bigger fish, and there's going to be a faction or an army or a build that will just blow you off the table in one go, or just shoot you to bits, or terrain just isn't favorable for you. And so the problem that Custodians have is right now that they either win big or they lose hard. And so I have found that Custodians at RTTs they go 2-1, at GTs and other things they go 4-1. But they really are struggling now. They did really skyrocket for a little bit and start winning events everywhere. But as people are starting to get more experienced against them, they always seem to lose that last game. And the reason is that they will smash their way through the first 4 games. I mean, they're not losing the first one. They'll win. Now, the Custodians player numbers leveling off, I think, at this stage is going to be more to do with people maybe moving on, trying out a different faction, having burned out that one playstyle a little bit. It could just be natural fluctuation. It could be, though, people starting to drop the faction because they know the bad codex is coming. They know the codex, which is going to make Custodians not very good, or the talk about the Custodians on the tabletop being not very good. Personally, I don't think that's what's going to kill the faction. I think what's going to kill the faction competitively is that the codex looks boring as fuck, and it seems like a serious power nerf. Okay, Grey Knights. They're doing fine. They are doing fine. I have to say, right? It's good to see the Grey Knights doing a bit better. They went through a bad time beginning of 10th edition. Real bad time. What has injected life back into the faction is Dread Knights. That's basically it. We've spoken about this a few times over different meta, so Meta Monday, so I don't need to get into this much. But it's the Dread Knights. At the RTT I was at this weekend, the player that won the RTT won it because he took every Dread Knight that you can legally take in the list. Like, what was it, like 3 Grandmasters, 3 regular Dread Knights? He took 6 Dread Knights. And then the rest of his army was just little units to jump around doing objectives. Dread Knights are really good. They are cheap, and they're cheap. They've got decent firepower, but not too much firepower. And they've got good damage out. They've got good durability, but not too much durability. At the end of the day, Dread Knights, they have a lot of shots, but they struggle to go above strength 10. They have a 2-up save and a 4-up invulnerable save, but they're only toughness 8. So Dread Knights being where they are right now it's a bit of a glass hammer. I think Grey Knights still have some bad matchups. I think if they play into a really heavy vehicle list, they're going to start struggling a bit. Because, like I said, their weapons strength caps out a little bit. And I also think there's some factions which just cream through those fucking Dread Knights, man. Like, really hard. If you're really relying on those, like, big vehicles, you're going to have, it could be tricky. But overall, Grey Knights have pivoted from... So, at the beginning of 10th, Grey Knights used to take loads of little small units, jump around all over the place, just do the scoring. And now, Grey Knights have pivoted from... They do that a bit now, but mostly it's Dread Knight spam. Then we get to Tau. Okay, I'm not trying to like... Okay, because it's Tau, right? Fucking sick about talking about this index, man. I'm fucking sick about talking about this index. Another week where these stats are just meaningless because any day now. Well, this weekend, the Tau Codex is going to come out. Whatever's been said about Tau before is true again. They're just, the reason they're doing so well. Tau, look, I hate saying this, okay? But Tau and Guard are in exactly the same place. We don't have a great detachment with our indexes. We don't have a great detachment rule, but we have some very solid data sheets and some very solid very solid points costs as well. So you get a lot on Tau are basically playing like Xenos Guard. You get a lot on the board. You see a Tau army on the board now, like that is a phenomenal amount of units. It's like back in the day, Tau would have like just the big suits and then like maybe 1 or 2 small units to objectives. Now they've got a unit of crisis suits, 2 or 3 riptides, breaches in fucking breaches inside fucking transports. They've got some other infantry going all over the place. Tau, they like Guard, they're just a big army that can just about get everything they want into a list. The big question is going to be what changed with the Codex. But they basically, they're fast, they're pretty fast, they're pretty maneuverable, they've got some good tricks with jump, shoot, jump, and they've got great firepower, they've got some fantastic combos. Breaches jumping out of Delphish is a great example. Again, comparing them to Guard, what I like about Tau is they've got a few different ways to play. They have a few different ways to play. You want to go traditional Tau with, like mech Tau, you can do that. You want to go, you've got enough different vehicles and transports then that you can do that. You want to go down like the tradition, another traditional Riptide, lots and lots of battlesuits, you can do that. You want to have triple Riptide, you can do that. Basically, Tau right now are just Xenos Guard. And that's not surprising that we've seen Tau numbers increase, and that their player base get some healthy numbers in. It's not surprising that we've seen Tau level out at about a 51% win rate. This is where I think Guard would probably end up if given time. I think Guard would probably end up about 51-52% win rate if not touched over the next balance patch. Yeah, I think we would. I think that's where we'd end up. Now this week Tau actually did quite well because not only did they have 7 players go 4-1, but 2 of those players also won tournaments. What's interesting is Guard also won 2 tournaments a week, but overall we have won 1 more event than Tau have. Yes, yeah. We've done well. As long as we can edge out these guys in tournament wins, that's all that, and player numbers, that's all that matters, right, boys? What player size did the Tau win? They won the smallest event of the week. And I think they went 4-1 at a medium-sized event, and they went 5-1 at a major, and they went 5-1 at the super major. So yeah, look at that. Tau and Guard in very, very similar positions there. There's another Tau. Oh, and they won a major as well. They're in a very, very similar place to Guard right now. Very, very. If it wasn't utter heresy and against everything that Guard players stand for, I imagine that Guard players, if they did pick up Tau, find it a very natural army to play right now. That is all going to change when the Codex comes out, I think. Black Templars. Consistently the best performing chapter every single week. I've said this every single week for a few weeks now. Consistently the best performing chapter. Black Templars basically fall. They've got 20 players, and basically they fall into 2 camps. So overall, 20 players, 51 wins out of 98 games played, 4 people going. 4-1, 52% win rate this week, 52% on average. And they've won 8 events over the course of their history. Black Templars basically fall into 2 camps at this point. You've got the people that are trying to win and the people that are having fun and also sometimes winning. If you are a try-hard Black Templar player, you will take Ironstorm Spearhead. The reason you'll take Ironstorm Spearhead is a fantastically good detachment, and it gets even better when all of your tanks get free multi-melters. If you want to win and try some things out, you'll try Gladius Task Force. Black Templars, I don't really know why, but they've been doing very well with Gladius Task Force. Black Templars can be built in a very all-round kind of way. Gladius Task Force is an all-round attachment. We've seen Gladius do well for multiple different chapters, so it's no surprise that the chapter that's performing the best is going to do well with what is universally universally well-performing detachment. Okay, and then you have the people that are having fun. And that's people that fall into Righteous Crusaders. Now, Righteous Crusaders had half of the Black Templar players this time, and yet they only had a 44% win rate. As we said before, this represents the Black Templar players. The people that will only play their detachment as Black Templars, and you could pay for a tournament ticket for them and pay for the most whacker meta Black Templar army and have it commission painted by the best painter in the world and give it to one of these kind of Black Templar players, and they will go ugh, and not play it because it's not, in their eyes, a Black Templar army. It's just a Marine army. And Black Templars like to be individualistic. I am a Black Templar player. I am a Black Templar player, and I have absolutely zero interest in running Ironstorm Spearhead, but I have quite a large interest in playing my Black Tide. I think that I think Black Templars might see some nerfs to their vehicles next, but I actually don't expect people to. I don't expect any nerfs on the front, the infantry front. I'd be very, very surprised. We haven't heard much about Black Tide recently. It's an army which I think is fun and fluffy, but I think it's a solid 3 and 2. Yeah, Black Templar's solid, but it's Black Templar vehicles and dreadnoughts and stuff which are causing the hoo-ha right now, not the Black Templar infantry. We then get to the red-headed stepchild of the competitive data, which is the Adeptus Mechanicus. Apparently, there are 14 people in this world which have got trust funds. The numbers are going up. The numbers are going up. And we're not just talking the win rate. We're talking the player numbers. Ever since people found out that AdMech have got 1 or 2 very viable builds, we've seen every week the numbers go up a little bit more. First it was just 2 guys. Then there was 3 or 4 guys doing it each week. And now, second week in a row when we've had plus 10, roughly, maybe not second week in a row, but second week in the last 3 weeks where we've had more than 10 people doing it. 39 wins out of 73 games, 3 players going 4 and 1 with an overall 53% win rate. That is an 8% rise over their average. But really, the main data, those are outliers. Really, the main data is here. So AdMech basically have 2 viable builds right now. The first one is, I'm gonna fucking bomb you back to the Stone Age, and then I'm going to disassemble the Stone Age and just basically just destroy everything that you've ever loved or cared about with this one viable build. But please God, don't get too close to me, because if you do, you're just going to tear me apart in combat. We want to be tower build, blow people off the table in one round of shooting. Literally saw not last week, the week before, a Custodians army, like the quintessential infantry Custodians army, get just tabled inside of 40 minutes over 1.5 AdMech shooting phases. That's the level of firepower that this can bring if you have the most optimized build for it. And the second build is We Wish We Were Endless Swarm. It's a Qatari Hunter cohort. which requires you to sell both of your kidneys and your first unborn or born child, as well as you performing sexual favors for basically Bill Gates or Jeffrey Bezos every single night. But if you do that, then you will get enough money together to be able to build the Skitarii Hunter cohort, which moves on to objectives, doesn't kill anything, and scores a lot of points, and is very, 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 very tough to kill. That's basically it. Apparently 4 people were willing to fellatio Bill Gates, and so they have actually been able to get the money together for it. And they did very, very well indeed. They got 12 victories out of 20 games played. 2 of their players went 4-1, 60% win rate overall, and consistently performing very well. Yeah, 50% win rate is a good win rate to have in this economy. Now, I did read a comment here on the Reddit about this. AdMech data shows a few things. At top tables, by the way, big thank you to Absurd It T. I don't know who you are, but you did leave this comment, so I want to give you the credit for it. AdMech data shows a few things. At top tables, between similarly high experienced players, AdMech is actually the 3rd or 4th strongest army in the game. At all other levels of normal players, they're one of the worst armies in the game. It is literally just the Skitarii Hunter cohort, $2,000 immovable horde list style that is winning games. It's a list owned by extremely few people, and even fewer who are willing to transport a horde of extremely fragile models events, and it puts 150 models around for 5+ games doing nothing but scoring objectives. This one list style is unhealthy for AdMech. It's unhealthy for opponents playing against it, it's unfun for the people who do own it, and it's unhealthy for the game as a whole. In no way whatsoever does this one list style being viable, even at the higher levels of competitive play, make AdMech a strong army. It's basically an inaccessible list. AdMech as a faction are probably the worst written and among bottom few weakest armies in the game. They attempt to play any style but this, which is not an option available to the vast majority of players. Obviously acknowledging the strength of this particular style and success, but it needs to die. The army needs to be rioting with stronger data sheets and rules and higher points. This needs to stop, GW. It needs to stop in the next data slate. This comment here. Hi, GW here. We read your comments and understand. So here's some amount of points drops on units people don't use. You can thank us later. The problem that AdMech has. So I agree with basically that comment. That guy maybe expressed very, quite strongly. But I agree. The Skitarii AdMech do have 2 viable playstyles, but both of those playstyles require a huge investment of money. Now, one of 2 things is going to happen here. I don't think GW is going to rewrite AdMech. They can't, man. It was all well and good rewriting rules that people got for free in their index, but you can't rewrite a code. This is the problem with the codex cycle. AdMech, you're stuck with your codex. You are stuck with it. I do not believe GW is going to fundamentally rewrite multiple data sheets after they've written a codex. They won't do it. People have spent hard money on that. But the first thing that's going to happen is they're going to put the points down. Okay? Which is hilarious because it's only going to exacerbate the real problem with AdMech, which is they're too expensive. The second thing I think is going to happen is I actually think that you are going to see numbers of players of AdMech go up. So yeah, long story short, AdMech are very, very good right now, and they have 2 or 3 viable builds. But the price thing is going to become less and less of an issue as people just find workarounds for it. Leagues of Votann doing really well. Short King's coming in strong. To be fair, Votann have been going from strength to strength recently. I've seen them win local RTTs consistently. There's a guy at Just Play who I play against every so often, and when we were at tournaments, and he's jumped onto the Votann train, and he's been doing very well with them. And there's another guy at Just Play who's been on the Votann train for a while now, and he's done very well with them as well. Leagues of Votann are solid, real fucking solid, boys. The thing is, if you look at the Votann, they haven't really got any bad data sheets. Votann were kind of in the same position that Guard were in, where they had okay data sheets but a terrible army rule. The big problem with Votann is that they had a very limited number of data sheets. They couldn't their army rule was very impactful on how badly they were doing. But they've had some points changes. and they had their army rule updated, and they've just slowly but surely been doing fine. And if you notice that they've been going up and up and up and up and up. Votann, 22 players is pretty decent for Votann. Not as many as World Eaters though, which is surprising considering that Votann and World Eaters came out at a similar amount of time. But I guess World Eaters are a bit more of a venerable faction, even if not a venerable on their own faction. There were plenty of care space from players which played mono Khorne and then just jumped over to World Eaters. 59 wins out of 110 games played. 6 people going 4 and 0. Oh, dropping 4 and 1. Sorry, 54% win rate, which is 5% above their average of 49%. But an average of 49% is very, very bloody respectable. And and the 54% is a good showing from them this week. No tournament wins though. Herein is the rub with Votann. I think are in the Goldilocks zone. They are competitively costed without needing they're competitively points costed without needing to spend an arm and a leg to get the viable build. They have a limited number of data sheets, which means that you can be fairly confident, and all the data sheets are quite solid, which means you can be fairly confident in buying into a Votann army. Because if you just basically buy if you basically buy a bit of everything for Votann, won't cost you the end of the world. It'll be a nice hobbying experience, and you'll be able to throw together a decent. You just buy 2 of every Votann unit, you're done. So they're in a really nice spot where they've got a viable build. Their data sheets are solid, barring sweeping points changes. You'll be able to pivot a little bit, and most people are pretty happy with where they are. That we're not expecting any major changes to the faction. They're in a decent place right now, Votann. Really strong. But they're not winning tournaments. They're a 4 and 1. They're a top table, but not tournament winning faction. In the Goldilocks zone. Right now, Votann just need more data sheets. That's it. But the power of the faction is good. The cost of the faction is not prohibitively high. And the things that make Votann good are well understood by those inside and out of the community. 1, they could go stale very, very quickly if you don't start giving them some new models and data sheets. 2, the longer that they stay with basically only one or, the longer they stay with limited data sheets, the easier it's going to be for people to start figuring them out and the win rate will start going down a bit, which we have seen happen every so often. And 3, and the big one is, when Necrons go, do Votann go? If Necrons, let's say just when Necrons go, and Votann no longer have such a reliable matchup, do we see Votann take a bit of a hit? That's the question. That's the thing we want to keep an eye on. The next faction we have is Chaos Demons. Chaos Demons, same shit, different week. I say this about demons every single time. Same shit, different week. It's Be'lakor. It's a few great and clean ones, and then you've got a Bloodthirster running around twatting people, and there's probably Shalaxi in there, and there's probably a Lord of Change in there. The last one is a maybe now. But there's going to be 4 to 5 big monsters. There's going to be a bunch of little shit running around as well. Big monsters run at you. Be'lakor lone ops things. They heavily rely upon deep strike, and they keep you busy with the big distraction, with the great and clear one going, look at me, look at me, look at me, get in my belly, I eat babies. And basically doing that, whilst the little buggers run around being like, oh, I'm going to deploy a teleporter here, or cleanse this little thing, or, engage in all fronts. It's same shit, different week. It does well for them, though. It's Chaos Demons are in a very similar place to Leagues of Votann. They've got a decent number of player numbers. They have 81 wins out of 145 games. 4 players going 4 and 1 with overall a 56% win rate, which is very, very high, and a 51% average win rate, which is really, really good. But they just can't win any fucking events. Chaos Demons, despite the fact that they have probably been above, I think Chaos Demons have had a higher win rate than Guard every single week. Problem with Chaos Demons is it's a bit of a stat check, really. Can you kill all the little shit in 2 turns and then kill a big monster a turn? If the answer is yes, you beat them. If the answer is no, you don't beat them. Apparently, a lot of factions can't beat them. They can't do that. But then you get to the top table, and there's no such thing as a stat check on the top table. You get to the top table, you play against, you get top table, you see a guard guy opposite you. You know what's going to happen? Guard guy is going to use his artillery to pick up all your little things, and then he's just going to sling damage 3 shots. Just damage through every single gun in his army. It's going to be damage 3 or higher. He's just going to sling that into your fucking monsters. And amazingly, your 18 wound monster only needs to fail 6 4-up saves, and then it falls over. The guard are going to make you take a lot more than 6 4-up saves. Demons have been in the same place since the beginning of 10th edition. Winning games, but not events. Coming in 3rd place is Sisters of Battle. Now, I know that a lot of people here love it when, Stepsister of Battle is on top. And but I think the Sisters are flying too close to the sun. I think Sisters are going to get nerfed. I'm sorry. But I think it's going to happen. When three out of the last 4 weeks you've been one of the top factions, sorry, but those miracle dice turned out to literally be fate dice with extra steps. So 28 players for Sisters, 83 victories, 146 games played, 9 people going the distance, which is almost a third of the players. A 57% win rate this week with an average of 54%, which is wild. 2 people actually winning events, bring the total number of events that they've won up to 10. And I think they won some big ones as well. Sisters won a 32-player Australia event. And did they win the big one of the week? I feel like they did. Yep. And they won. They went 7-0 at the Super Major. Sisters have been threatening to win a Super Major, and they've only gone and bloody done it. I'm glad that the Sisters not only won in Australia, but they also won the Super Major. A lot of people, if they just seen Sisters win the Australian event, would have gone, weird Australian meta and discounted. We should never do, because Australian meta, it can be a little bit different, but it's been less weird and wacky. In 8th edition, it was all over the fucking place. Now, in 10th edition, it's pretty much in line with everywhere else. Sister Battle do well because of Miracle Dice. They have some solid units. So you take, thinking of Sisters, you take the one unit of Battle Sisters, one regular unit of Battle Sisters, and you stick them on an objective, and you just gain a Miracle Dice a turn. Great. And then after that, basically, you cram as much Melter in your list with some half-decent combat options in case things get a little bit close to the sharp end, but really it's because you can put a lot of, I don't know the exact Miracle Dice mechanics, but you can put a lot of them around your army into different units and everything, and they're not really capped. You can generate as many as you physically try to generate. If you really lean into generate, and the units that generate them also aren't, they're still, at the end of the day, there's lots of different ways of generating them. A lot of the units that do generate them aren't like tax units. They can actually kill stuff as well. You know how GW fixes Sisters? They don't change any of the points. They just cap the Miracle Dice. They might fuck around with the points, but that's just delaying the inevitable. I think Sisters of Battle basically are going to get the Fate Dice treatment, where they'll do a limit, an initial limit, and then if it still doesn't fix the problem, they'll fucking hammer them into the ground. Speaking of, we've spoken about Catan a few times tonight, and we've said how a few factions are sort of doing well because of Catan. Let's get to Codex Catan, or well, I should say Codex Necrons. Most popular faction with 204 wins out of 358 games is obscene. 22 players. 22 players going 4-1. Fucking hellfire. 57% win rate, which actually gives them the same win rate as Sisters of Battle. 55% average win rate, which gives them a higher average win rate than Sisters of Battle. And they won 5 events. They have won 27 tournaments over the last 3 months. 27 events of 140 events of the last 12 weeks, more than double the nearest next faction. Now, this 57% win rate is actually somewhat artificially depressed because you have got the Awakened Dynasty, which didn't do very well this week. 6 people went. Let me be clear. Did very well by some factions would kill for this win rate, but it's the Annihilation Legion guy actually ended up having a good week this time. He obviously had a good run. It comes down to Hypercrypt Legion and Canoptek Court. Everything else is just a bit of fun, whatever, lol. Hypercrypt Legion with many Catans and Wraiths. 40 players. There were more people running Hypercrypt Legion than there were just running Hypercrypt Legion in Necrons than there were entire factions of other people. 119 wins out of 200 games, 13 people going the distance, 60% win rate, which is up over their 54% average win rate, and they won 2 events this weekend for a total of 12 events won in the last. They've won 1 event every week for the last 12 weeks on average. Surprisingly, Canoptek Court could be argued to be the more powerful one. A lot of people are on the Hypercrypt train right now, but Canoptek Court, it's got not as many players, but still a lot of players. 68 wins, 122 games, 7 people going 4-1. Now, you might find it surprising that I say, considering it's got a lower win rate this week, that I say Canoptek Court is potentially actually the more powerful detachment. With a 56% win rate this week versus Hypercrypt Legion's 60% win rate this week. But the thing is, Canoptek Court has a 57% win rate on average, which is 3% higher than the Hypercrypt one. And they won more tournaments this week. And they have won more tournaments over the last 12 weeks as well. Now, to be honest, there's very little in it. Both are fucked. Like, both are fucking cracked. Like, let's not beat around the bush. Catan are very, 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 very strong, but it's not just Catan. I think Necrons are going to see a fucking hard-ass nerf. Necrons have been about this tough since the beginning, and this good, since the beginning of the edition. And I've said this last week, but go back and watch a lot of my videos, my Meta Mondays at the beginning of the edition. I kept saying Necrons were going to be the inheritors. After Eldar got sorted out, Necrons were going to be the inheritors. And they were just being, Catan spam has been a problem since the beginning of the edition. Necrons it's not been 3 months of them being an issue. It's been 8 months of them being an issue. I think, from my personal perspective, I think that sentiment, that needle has started coming down. And from my perspective personally, it's now gone past the point of goodwill to I'm fucking sick of Necrons being good now. And the problem is when that needle goes that way, and a lot of people start feeling that way, GW, to basically satisfy the court of public opinion, needs to do a hard nerf. Finally, we get to the first place people. So despite the fact all of the talk about Necrons and Sisters, we have Thousand Suns at the top. What are my thoughts on this? Well, let's go through the stats first. 27 players shows a relatively healthy number of players, similar stats to Sister Battle. 78 wins with 134 games played. 12 people, almost half of the people that ran 1000 Suns went 4-1 with them. They had a 58% win rate this week, and that's not an anomaly because I had a 52% win rate over the last 12 weeks. One person won a tournament with them, and they've had 6 tournament wins over the course of the last 12 weeks. 1000 Suns are incredibly good. They are flying under the radar right now, and I don't think many people are expecting nerfs towards them, because remember, they've already had a lot of nerfs with, like, in theory, at the beginning of the edition when things like Overwatch and stuff changed. 1000 Suns are potent. They're under the radar right now. 52% average. Very, very tasty. 50% average, and no one's talking about it. That's the thing. Everyone's talking about sisters. Everyone's talking about Necrons. They talk about Guard. But a lot talk about like Admech and stuff. No one's talking about it. That's what. Not no one, but it's not getting a lot of attention. Thousand Suns are red. The big thing about the Thousand Suns list is that it's whether you go MSU or you go more heavily into bigger units, but it's all just it's Rubrics and Magnus and Rubrics and Magnus. It's not an expensive army to put together. It's kind of like Custodes. Take one big fucking model, and then one big model, 3 boxes of Rubrics. It's Magnus, 3 boxes of Rubrics, 2 monsters, and a handful of characters. It's not that. By Warhammer standards, it's probably a total of. It's probably less than 10 boxes. Magnus, 3 boxes of Rubrics. Let's say 4, so you turn a bunch of Rubrics into extra, like sorcerers and stuff. So 4 boxes of infantry. Vortex Beast, Demon Prince, Rhino, Zangors. One box of those things. Zangors, by the way, Zangors, I mean the Zangors on disc. Not the little foot Zangors, they're shit. Araman, yeah, there you go. Good point, Doctor Araman. It's about 10 boxes. So it's eminently accessible. So it's accessible as Custodes. We saw how good those were, and it's relatively easy to pilot. March forward, destroy everything in front of you. Anything that ties you, if you get tied up in combat, doom bolt the thing that's tying you up in combat off the fucking board and then shoot anyway. And that just about covers it. Whoa. We're on the cusp of an exciting meta, I should say. Overall, we're seeing a couple of exciting things happen, like Guard on the up. But we're also seeing a couple of patterns being followed week in, week out. I think a nice big balance patch is just what the doctor ordered, just what will keep the game fresh and interesting. We are all on the treadmill. We need the treadmill to start going round again. Yeah, there we go. But that's just like my opinion, man. But that's all for now. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed today's stream. And of course, as always, see you guys next time. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian Glory Hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing, truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full-time without the incredible and generous support of my members, so thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier patrons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Alex Dengal, Bon Vert, Mad Larkin, Marcus Roberts, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, Try Again Bragg, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Barney. Seriously guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, See you guys next time.